Have you ever made a one block wonder quilt? We're gonna make the same block. We're only gonna use 2 colors of fabric, and it's gonna make a stunning quilt. We're gonna start with 3.5-inch strips in 2 contrasting colors. I have a navy blue and kind of a speckled light bright pink. We're gonna put those 2 strips right sides together and sew down one long side with a 1/4-inch seam. Again, these are width of fabric, so 42-inch long strips, and they're 3.5 inches wide. I am using a free pattern from Alanda Crafts. I will put a link to the pattern in the description box. The fabrics that I'm using, I purchased at Joann's. My 12-year-old daughter picked out these fabrics. The blue almost has a denim-like quality, and the pink is a little bit textured, and I think it just creates a really nice contrast. Perfect for this very graphic design. Okay, once we've used our 2 contrasting colors to make our strip set, we are going to iron this. I'm putting the darker color on top, and I'm ironing first to set the seam. Then I will fold that top layer towards me and iron this open. The seam allowance is going towards the darker fabric. The next step is to subcut your fabric, your strip set, into 3.5-inch pieces. So I'm just lining it up with one of the straight lines on my cutting mat, cutting off the salvages, and now I'm going to cut every 3.5 inches. We are going to use these pieces to make 4 patches. The name of this quilt is actually a double 4 patch, and it just really works well with 2 contrasting colors. So you just need yardage. This is not something that you would use a pre-cut for. You need yardage of 2 contrasting colors. So again, I'm just subcutting every 3.5 inches. The next step is to take 2 of those subcut pieces, put them so the colors alternate. The seams should nest up, because if you press it, all of it to the darker color, then your seams should nest on this 4 patch. You're going to sew those 2 pieces together with a 1/4-inch seam, and you're just going to repeat this with all of your strip set pieces. This is going to make all of the 4 patches. Now your 4 patches should measure 6.5 inches. Now this pattern is called double 4 patch. So I'm using these pieces ahead of me as my guide, because I've already made some of the blocks. And I'm going to lay out the blocks underneath it. We're basically making a larger 4 patch using 2 of our smaller 4 patches and then 2 solid pieces that are cut to 6.5 inches square. And so I'm using, again, the blocks right ahead of me as the guide. It's all in the pattern online as well. But once I made 2 blocks, I just laid out the next ones directly underneath it so that I could make sure that I was doing it in the correct order. And I believe the pattern name is because you just keep making larger 4 patch blocks. And it's a really fun pattern that allows you to do so much chain stitching. You can just sit and chain piece, because whichever part you're working on, you can just sit and do several of that step all at one time. On both my blue blocks and my pink blocks, I am ironing towards the square that's the solid print square. And so away from the smaller 4 patch. And then flip it so it reverses, so you have your diagonal line going across. Your seams should nest if you ironed both of them to the larger square. And then I'm just going to sew these 2 pieces together, and that forms my block. And I'm going to do a blue block, and then I'm going to do a pink block. Same thing, just make sure your diagonal line is going across the middle of the block. Nest up your seams, and then sew down one side with a 1/4-inch seam. Again, the 2 blocks that are at the front of my cutting mat were my guide blocks. Once I had those 2 blocks made, I didn't really have to refer to the pattern anymore. I just used those 2 blocks at the front of my cutting mat as my guide. This is definitely some of the easiest patchwork I've done, but it makes such a striking quilt. I think you could do this in so many different color combinations. I'm really liking the pink and blue that my daughter picked out, but I think there's a lot of different color combinations you could use. And as long as you have really good contrast, then your pattern, your finished quilt will end up really striking. The Alanda Craft version on her website, she has very precise pressing instructions for putting the rows together. What I did was when I went to put my rows together, I just always pressed towards the navy blue block. Let me know if you would try a quilt with only 2 colors. I've never attempted to make a quilt with only 2 colors, but I was pleasantly surprised by the finished appearance. Anyway, if you liked this video, give it a likes, give it a thumbs up, hype it, subscribe for more. I'm always quilting something over here. Happy quilting!